I think we are live. Yeah. Okay. All right, guys, we are live. Doug is going to be here in 2 seconds. If you haven't, my name's Kevin Alvarez, and today we have a special guest, one of the members of the VeriCoin community. Goes by the name of Beau. BAUX is his handle on in Slack. And so Beau's working on some really interesting things relating to eco mining. So a lot of cool, innovative things there. And he's based in Wyoming, which has a ton of progression in the blockchain area. So Beau, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you're working on exactly, and maybe a little bit about what's going on in Wyoming, and what you've done. I know you've also helped a little bit with this project in terms of social media. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everyone what you're working on?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Kevin and Doug. It's a pleasure to be here, guys. Really cool things going on in Wyoming. We were just talking about 6 months ago, I couldn't even buy Bitcoin in Wyoming, and now it's actually considered an asset. And so Wyoming in itself has really done a lot just in the last 8 months with legislation process and getting cryptos and blockchain acknowledged. They're doing stuff with like the beef chain and kind of that stuff. So yeah, it's really cool to be part of it and be in Wyoming. We're working on some projects with kind of the mining. We're kind of working on two different miners. One's kind of more of an eco miner. It's kind of a smaller, compact, affordable unit that can be kind of run off the grid, can be stacked, can be added, can be upgraded. But yeah, our first type is kind of solar based, but we'd like to kind of integrate, be able to do hydro, wind, and eventually even, a thermo kind of based model. And then the second one, which we're kind of just getting into, is actually working with coal bed methane and converting coal bed methane into blockchain.
Interesting. And as far as specific to Barium, and this will all be published on the web because we're going to feature you as a community member. But do you want to maybe share how what was it about this project and Barium specifically that attracted you to it and getting involved with it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Verium and VeriCoin, the VeriConomy, they've got a lot of great aspects to it. I see a lot of value in it compared to some of the other projects going on. It made sense, having the two coins working together and one for the security and the store of value and the other one kind of doing the back end stuff. We just saw it a really good fit for kind of what we're doing as far as hardware base goes, as far as the project goes, the community. I know Doug's really active and that's a big deal when you look at projects and you find one that you kind of want to run with. Kind of always believed in the project and can kind of see the end goal of it. It's just, getting there. Right. So it works hand in hand with what we're doing too, like some of the hardware, CPU based mining and stuff.
And I think we touched on this earlier as far as one of the big aspects about mining being truly decentralized, and with Verium being CPU based mining, couple that with what you're doing now and making it very ecological friendly, it really opens up, I think, a ton of opportunity worldwide, so that regardless of the cost of energy where you're living, you could hypothetically mine with a low cost, inexpensive piece of equipment and couple that with the low energy, well, not even low energy costs. It's essentially renewable energy. So there's not much of a cost other than the initial outlay of the solar panels or whatever else. So yeah, it's really interesting stuff that you've got going on. And Doug, do you have any questions relating to this as far as the hardware? Wait, Doug? Yeah. I don't know if it was just me, but it sounded like you were Iron Man. Did you hear the same, Beau?
Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing there.
Yeah, it sounds very robotic. Don't know if you changed a setting or something. No, it still sounds like you're a robot. I don't know. You. I don't know what's going on. Doug, yeah, I don't know. You might want to check the settings or something. But you were talking fine before and then went to the bathroom and you came back as Iron Man. All right.
Insane.
Yeah, you're fine now. Thank you.
I just switched it off, switched it back on. I was gonna say, is it doing it again?
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm laughing. Oh my god. I think what Bo's doing is really awesome, and also there's a need for this in many respects because aside from just mining, there's people who have solar panels or have renewable energy sources and then have nothing to do with the extra energy. So like, for instance, it used to be in New Jersey that you could sell your extra electricity if you have solar panels back to the grid. PSE&G or whatever the local company is would buy it back from you. And basically they've been buying it back at a cheaper and cheaper rate. And now it's to the point where they won't even really buy it back. You get like some minor credits or I don't know. They're basically, it seems like they're phasing it out. So one of the cool things about using not only just to mine efficiently and once your panels are paid off or whatever it is, you get free coins effectively from the sun or whatever your source of energy is. But the other is people who are just looking to not lose the extra energy that's being produced by their systems. This kind of approach is ideal because literally you're converting that extra electricity into currency. So I think it's to be honest, I think this kind of approach is going to become a standard to the point where if you're not doing renewable energy mining, you're just not going to be competitive.
Yeah, and again, this project has a lot of kind of benefits to doing it because it's really hard. To run let's say an ant miner or something off of solar, you're going to need a lot of solar panels and whatnot. But
yeah.
With CPU based, you can do it and you can do it efficiently. And what we're working on is to be able to create something that's real easy, real simple. You can integrate your home system right into this, retrofit it to where it's almost plug and play. It doesn't take a rocket science to get you mining via solar panels and stuff.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
Okay. Bo, anything else you want to add in terms of, like I said, I know you've done some things with the project too with relation to social media. Is there anything from that end you want to share or is there anything, you want to maybe tell the community that could help push, help with what you're working on? So just any closing thoughts or whatever, and then we'll move into the other topics that we talked about.
Yeah, sure. No, anybody in the community that wants to kind of reach out and kind of chat, share some ideas with kind of what I've mentioned, feel free to. I'm totally open on new ideas and working with people. I'd love to get more involved with the social part of things. And, I think it really has some merit what we're doing here. Wyoming's a great state to do it. There's a lot going on here with the blockchain and stuff. Although it doesn't have a lot of people on it, it's really huge with the blockchain and stuff. They're doing a lot of great things. And, I'll be in touch with Kevin and Doug on the progress of the miners and stuff. And as we get closer to kind of release to that, the prototype unit of the eco miner, at least, you guys are going to be the first ones to kind of know about it and hear about it. And then, we can get some more input and kind of go from there with it.
Okay. So obviously,
awesome.
Yeah, obviously one of the big topics of discussion on this call is relating to Barium being removed from Bittrex due to low volatility, or not low volatility, but low volume. So Doug, do you want to, I know you had a call and I know an NDA was signed for whatever reason, so I'm not sure what you can say, but I'm sure, we've mentioned some things in the Slack channel and, but from here, might be a good idea to kind of explain what you're able to and what you see going forward, how this can be, handled.
Yeah. So Bittrex does require like an NDA for these types of things. I think it's just standard protocol. I'm not aware of any proprietary information that they actually said in the phone call. I think it's just in case that there is some that, you know, everybody's covered. But basically the sole reason, as I said in the chat, and for those that didn't see the conversations about it, the sole reason is volume. Verium has always had low volume, partly because of the way it's designed. It's designed to be a store of value in a paired ecosystem with VeriCoin, the currency. So partly it's the nature of having a store of value digital commodity. And when we talked to them, they basically said, on all the other fronts, we're good. We submitted legal paperwork to them when they required it for Barium and VeriCoin, and we've worked with them numerous occasions on support. You know, whenever anything needs to be done with the wallets or whatever, updates, so on and so forth. And they actually have really enjoyed working with us. Obviously, VeriCoin's still on their exchange, so we'll continue to work with them. VeriCoin's staying because of its volume is higher. You know, so it is what it is. Like, there's no, it's not a good thing. But Verium is on other exchanges. And I think it also reminds me of what I initially thought when I first came into the space, which is, how can you have a decentralized currency and then all the coins move through these centralized exchanges? And I pulled up, and I remembered this morning this tweet that I did in 2014, and it was right after the MintPal hack, which resulted in 8 million VeriCoin being stolen in 2014, when MintPal was like literally the only exchange that you could trade altcoins for Bitcoin with any significant volume. So it was not just a centralized entity in the sense that all the coins were on some dude's server, but it was literally the only exchange in the marketplace as well. And, you know, everybody knows the story basically, or you can look it up. There's CoinDesk articles about it. There was a massive hack. It had nothing to do with VeriCoin itself. It had to do with the problem of security with anything digital, when, number one, security practices are not good, and number two, it's not a decentralized security mechanism in particular. So, and I tweeted back in 2014 that this is a call to action for decentralized exchanges. Unfortunately, there really hasn't been much movement since then. There has been some. There is actually decentralized exchanges now, which at the time there actually wasn't at all. There is some, and there is a movement in that direction. But I took it upon myself, partly because of this entire dynamic, as it relates to VeriCoin and now with Verium, years ago, that once we have the binary chain going, once we have the binary chain active and we have wallets that people can use that run both chains, I'm going to implement into the wallet easy ways for people to perform multi-sig transactions with each other, so that they can trade VeriCoin and Verium back and forth. The cool thing about this is it would be not only quote unquote like decentralized, not running on one server, but it would literally be a P2P exchange system where people who are normally sitting on like Binance, you know, trading back and forth and trying to gain profit, they could actually act as their own mini version of Binance to whatever extent they're capable. So like if I have, say I have 1,000 Barium and 10,000 VeriCoin, you know, I have like a pretty good amount of both coins. I can supply liquidity. I can essentially be a decentralized, key controlled third party in a P2P exchange. I can either directly exchange with someone, or I can be an intermediary with two other parties, and it all be controlled via keys, so no one can actually cheat. If people try and cheat, then they lose their money. So then these P2P exchangers, which doesn't exist yet. This is like anywhere. But these P2P exchangers can compete with each other for a fee of the conversion from VeriCoin to Verium and so on. And it can be, you can literally have grassroots P2P trading where people are actually, rather than sitting on an exchange trying to get 15% and dump on new people's heads, they can actually take fees for volume of trades to whatever extent they want. So to me, this is the real vision, is not, oh no, well, this third party that has all their coins sitting on a server no longer has Verium on there. It's more so, and Bittrex, to be honest, has been one of the better ones. When this a side note, but this is an example of what I experienced, and I think it doesn't matter now any details of this, but at the time it was like, I was just like, wow. But when MinPal direct messaged the VeriCoin Twitter account at like 4 a.m. the night of the hack, and I was talking to him, and I got his phone number, a guy in the UK, and we talked on the phone. He explained the situation to me, and I remember concluding after that conversation, this guy is moving millions of dollars through his computer, and he has no idea what the hell he's doing. He basically made a really nice front end for an exchange, and has pretty much no clue how to have good security practices for the coins. And I was like, this is like mind-boggling. Anyway, that's an aside, but the ultimate goal is, Bittrex is much better than that, obviously, but still the goal is to have a totally different system where there isn't this central party that everything has to move through. Like I said, where people can compete to make fees in an organic very economy, as we call it, where we can basically build a little mini economic cycle within VeriCoin and Verium's ecosystem, which includes miners, stakers, and ultimately I want to have exchangers. And this would be the full like economic cycle, and then we bring in merchants, and then we do the hard task additionally of merchants. It's just bringing in merchants into that economic cycle, but without even having merchants, which is the tallest order, we can still have our own economic cycle in all the other aspects. So this is one of the main reasons that, besides the technical and the security and the other reasons for the binary chain, it is our ability. You can't have an economy with one coin unless you're connecting into the other economy. But with two coins, you actually can. There is things you can do that can then connect into the existing economy, but you don't have to wait for a connection into the existing economy. You can have your own economic cycle with two coins as well. So that's kind of more so my perspective. So to me, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is, and it doesn't really bother me that much. It only affects me to the extent that it affects the community. But they also said that relisting is definitely an option. If our volume goes up, if we're executing on our plans and they see action in the market, whatever, however they make these decisions. And they would consider us for relisting, not only because they technically have a relisting procedure, but because they know that working with us is an efficient, smooth process also. So I would say for now, if you want to do VRM, BTC, move to ideally in a decentralized exchange. We have Crypto Bridge, and I think we have another one, more recent one. I can't remember what it is. or maybe it hasn't been announced yet. And we have a couple decentralized exchanges coming online with VeriCoin and Verium. And then I don't know how much we can say about the newer ones yet, because we just kind of have been in talks with them, and the process is moving forward. But definitely there's Crypto Bridge, and then there's Livecoin, which is just a regular centralized exchange, and I think there's a couple others. But so if you need to, move to those for now. But in the end, just using them is not the goal.
I also believe there's some progress that Fighton's working on to get us on some other decentralized, like as you mentioned. But the thing is, and I've been involved with this project since I believe it was 2016, October 2016, I believe, more or less. There's been so many things that and again, it's not just on our side, but there's a lot of things that were supposed to happen. I forget the one thing where you're supposed to be able to buy it with fiat. I remember the name of it, but those things are out of our control. I mean, so when you have these third-party entities, we want to work with as many third-party entities as possible, because that's how you get adoption. But on the other hand, I think what makes this project a little bit unique too is that we have a overarching philosophy of it being, it can survive on its own, with or without a specific third party. So if the project's ever dependent on Bittrex or any other, for that matter, that's not a good sign of strength, in my opinion. So, like you mentioned, it survived through a big debacle with MintPal in 2014, and that made the project stronger ultimately. That's what
that actually was probably for me, the most defining moment in my approach, because prior to that, I was in favor of decentralization, but I didn't see firsthand how much it actually can destroy these systems. So for me, it's decentralization or we go home. There's no point, because Visa and the governments do centralization fairly well, certainly better than a handful of people, in a community, or thousands of people in a community, or whatever. They have salaries, they have laws, they have, regulations, they have all these things in place to protect everybody involved. Centralization has already been done, and it's been done well by the regular infrastructure institutions. But centralization has inherent flaws, and that's what this is all about.
There's a question, I'll bring it up because I always want to try to throw these questions in from the community. Someone asked, do you have any guesstimate of the amount of Barium on Bittrex, and what if too many of them are left there? What impact would it have on Barium, because there's such a limited supply to begin with? So this person's concerned that if by chance, and it's a good argument, I mean, if you don't go in,
I don't think Bittrex is very much by the book. I mean, I would say other exchanges might do some funny things, but they're one of the first exchanges to abide by all of New York's bit license laws. So they're really by the book. So I don't see them taking like people's coins that they never withdrew in time and then like dumping them. I think they're probably just going to have to either archive the wallet or delete it or something. So if anything, I think it might just reduce the liquid supply of Barium, which might, basically just increase the effective value of all the other Barium. We had this scenario at MintPal too, when the exchange went down. There was literally 30% of the supply was on that exchange, and people were after everything, they were given the ability to withdraw. They were given a few weeks or a month or something like that. And there's always people who, like 6 months later, are like, "Oh, I was supposed to do that," But it was a small percentage. I'm not really worried about it.
Okay. And now, you mentioned the progress towards binary chain and be able to have the, oh, let me actually go back before we switch to kind of roadmap and some of the general plans. And because this relates to the Verium issue to some extent. In the past, there there was this mention of the hash power needs to be a certain extent level before
Mm-hmm.
binary chain becomes
Mm-hmm.
safe. And so my worry when Bittrex said, "Hey, how is that going to maybe reduce the amount of people mining Barium now? And does that set us back um, towards our goal of binary chain?" And so I want your input on that and your feedback from that end of things.
So as I've been, so mostly what we've been working on has been the actually very beneficial but arduous process of porting the blockchain code base to the newer Bitcoin version, because we basically have our protocols in the Bitcoin blockchain code base. So we've been upgrading the code base. That is largely completed now, and we're basically in the home stretch of that process, which is good. But while we're coming out of that home stretch, I was thinking through everything regarding how to implement the binary chain, and I actually there's a very simple way we can activate the binary chain without having a very steep Verium difficulty requirement, which I think is overly conservative if we do it a certain way. And I'll tell you how that breaks down. So basically, Verium has a variable block time, and the probability of having a block is dependent on the difficulty. And Verium block time is proportional to the difficulty. So the higher the difficulty goes, the faster the block time goes. This ultimately is how Verium is going to work. Well, this is how the VeriCoin auxiliary mining through Verium is going to work. Where Verium miners are mining, they're also submitting their unused hashes to the VeriCoin chain. And occasionally those unacceptable hashes on the Verium chain will be acceptable on the VeriCoin chain. And the VeriCoin chain has a 1 minute block time, and the starting block time for Verium is it's like 5-6 minutes or so. Long story short is we can have Verium's block frequency on the VeriCoin chain in terms of auxiliary mining come in slowly, as it honestly would anyway in just the standard Verium block time implementation. But I can test in testnet to make sure that the probability of, for instance, Microsoft decides to mine Verium, gets 51% of the hash rate, and then starts getting 51% of the VeriCoin blocks. This is like the risk. But we can control that based on Verium's difficulty schedule as it relates to block time. So right at the start, in the current implementation, Verium would only get 1 out of 6 blocks per VeriCoin. So the ability to perform an attack through Verium onto VeriCoin is extremely low. And all it's really doing is just diversifying the consensus. So we can have the transition be smooth because we actually have these smooth parameters in the protocol already. So we can connect Verium using the same approach and have a kind of smooth, proportional transition from VeriCoin only, POS blocks only on VeriCoin to POS plus occasional Verium POW blocks coming in. And so with this approach, we really don't need to wait for a particular difficulty. We can just scale down the number of blocks that happen per unit time to correspond to that difficulty that we were targeting. When we were targeting a specific difficulty, we were it was like in the run up in 2017, and we're like, oh yeah, let's just go for this difficulty because it's conservative and and we're kind of heading up towards it. And now the market, like everything else, is correcting from the big run. Well, now corrected, I guess, and so on. So it, having a difficulty target doesn't make as much sense as having now a block frequency target that we apply. So yeah. It's actually the same. It's different side of the same coin.
And I think with initiatives like what Bo's working on, and even a few other people in the community that are doing some things in the angle from mining, I can see where the hash rate can, if that was an integral factor, I could still see where that could be exponentially increased in a short amount of time. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it.
Well, it's really about, for me, it's trying to get as many participants as possible. So it's not about hash power, it's about number of miners. I'd rather see 1 million different people mining Barium than 10,000 that are doing X amount. So the more people we can mine with small, like what's going on in Venezuela right now, and you can still fire up your laptop or some old computer that you had and technically mine Barium. So, the energy cost in Venezuela is next to nothing. And yeah, you might not get huge rewards, but every dollar in Venezuela is worth having right now, or any Barium or any Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency for that matter. So,
and I think too, I agree. And I think also after doing everything with Verium and seeing how everything went with the mining and the efficiency and the preservation of CPU mining and all these and preservation of security, many POW chains have been 51% attacked at this point. We have a good security record, a flawless security record. We also have a great record in terms of the protocols functioning like just great. But like looking back on everything, I think the biggest thing that I and Pat and everyone else who was working on it missed was how important the frequent payouts would be to people, and how much that would have an impact on people ending up in pools. And to what extent they would end up in pools. I thought they would all ultimately end up in pools, but I didn't think the payout frequency would have such a strong effect on that, despite the high fees and despite this and that, the way it was designed. So in my mind, I feel like the only missing piece with Verium is higher frequency payouts on chain. And after the back end implementation of the Bitcoin update is done for Verium, finalizing some pieces and connecting it with the UI and so on. But my next mission with Verium is to get the on-chain mining share implementation in the form of special transactions. And then people can just solo mine and get daily or more payouts in fractional rewards from each block. So to me, honestly, no one has that. No one has that plus CPU mining. And to be honest, I haven't seen better CPU mining algorithm either. They exist, but I don't know of anyone that's most efficient on an ARM processor, which is a major win. So I think you put those two pieces together, and I have no concerns at all about how many miners we're going to have ultimately, because I think it's going to, the goal is, again, we said this before, the goal is not to, like, despite, Kevin doing an awesome job, the goal is not to just convince people to start using our coins. The goal is to make the coins such that there's nothing else they really want to use. So that's built into the way that they're designed. So if you can light up a smartphone or a tablet or a laptop and get money every day and not see a bump in your electricity that's significant, like technically you could always see it, but on these kinds of devices, it would not be significant. You know, that nobody needs to sell that. Like
Right.
people, that will sell itself. So that's the goal. That's the way, you know, we're thinking about it. And all these other things that are the standard approach, which is pay $100K to get on the high volume exchange and then get delisted anyway. And then the whole project fails because that was the last 100K, and, or pay $100K and then ride the wave and then convince people that what your technology is good until they realize it's not. You know, that's all noise. That's all noise. What really matters is, does this stuff do what people need it to do or not?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It has to solve a problem, and it has to be easy to use. And I know these are the things that you're working towards. You know, I've always said the day that my mom can use Verium or mine Verium, and the day that my mom can, you know, make a payment with VeriCoin, that's what we have to be thinking about. But fundamentally, the structure needs to be solid and strong. So you can have great UI and great user experience, but if the protocol is off, if there's security flaws, you're making a big problem. Because now you got a lot of users that are susceptible to being attacked. So
Yeah.
I think the thing about this project that's always impressed me, I mean, there is a slow pace, but you mentioned too, this is a tortoise versus the hare. And then during the bull run in 2017, I saw other projects like flying by us in terms of promotion and marketing and getting on exchanges and everything. But my thought was, okay, you got all these people running full speed ahead, but to their cliff, I mean, to the edge of the cliff. So we're kind of doing things in my mind the right way. At the same time, we definitely want to see an improvement in the expediency of development, and that involves getting more people to help contribute. It's not fair to throw everything. And don't get me wrong, we have other people contributing, and contributing towards the development. But could we use more people? Absolutely. And I think that's the challenge. Is you know, you mentioned before, there's not really, on the whole face of the earth, there's not a lot of people that really understand what this is, and so do they have the ability? And then those that do have the ability, they're getting big paychecks thrown in front of them. So to find someone that wants to contribute to a project that doesn't have a revenue model, I mean, yeah, the growth, there could be growth and there could be market cap growth and everything else, but we're not selling a product. We can't necessarily take you know, an invested amount of money and then turn that money into more money necessarily. We don't have that capacity. There might be some other creative things we could think about in that regard, or what I'd like to see are projects that are commercial based, that are supporting the project, and then the revenue, some of that revenue from the for-profit side could be, whether it be donated back or sent back in. I think that's really where,
like ideal.
Yeah. So what is the?
I'll say one more thing about like timelines, just from my perspective too. I honestly don't feel comfortable like convincing people to use a protocol that hasn't been in the wild for at least a year. You know, so like Barium now has been in the wild for we're on 3 years. So to me, I'm like, obviously, when you go about doing this kind of development, you do it so that there isn't any issues. But you don't know that for sure that there isn't issues until the issues don't arise. And even if they don't arise, you don't know for sure that there isn't issues. So from my perspective, the longer it's in the wild, the better. But at the same time, we've done that. VeriCoin has been in the wild for 5 years, Verium for 3. The protocols are solid. We're updating the blockchain code base so that that's solid and has all the security components that the Bitcoin developer community has been working hard on. And we're ready, in my opinion, now to take the steps forward and implement the binary chain. And then the way I see it is, once we have the binary chain implemented, we have this new layer. It's not a second layer like Lightning because it's on chain, but it's a layer that exists between two chains, and we can build applications, we can build governance, we can build trading into that new space that will live across chains. And this no one is doing, and it's in my mind the next step. I think we're ready to go forward with the next step. So we're just putting the pieces together, and yeah, we can always use more hands in development. It's hard to find people. It's hard to get people when you're not paying them a salary with benefits and so on as well. Right. But they do exist, and we do have people. Always, we have multiple people working on development, but there's always room for more. In particular, C and blockchain experience is, for a lot of the stuff we're doing, a must. Largely because we don't really have the time to also train people, but in certain cases we will. For instance, HD4R, he is a developer who has actually done some great work on VeriCoin and Verium. He had no blockchain experience, but he is just about to get his PhD in computer science at Cambridge University. So he's on the one hand has exceptional computer science skills, and on the other hand has a lack of experience in blockchain. So there's certain cases where we will, so in that case, I kind of showed him around the blockchain development world, and it was relatively efficient, and he was pretty quick on his feet because of all of his other skills. So in particular, we're always looking for C++, blockchain development experience. If you don't have blockchain development experience, but you have vast amounts of C experience, that's also good. Because then, I can kind of show you around, or others can kind of show you the key points, and then you can kind of take it from there. And then user interfaces for the new wallets are mostly done. We're basically just need to marry them to the actual protocol. So front end people that are familiar with not just designing the user interface, but also tying it into the back end. That's a need right now that we're doing, and we can do, but more hands the better. And then the mobile wallets are being worked on. If you have mobile development experience, you can contact Miles and Max. They're working on that and making some good progress. They're also working off of the code base update that we're doing. And yeah, so the way I see it is, in terms of timeline, we don't like to give dates because they always move. They rarely move forward. They always move back. Very once in a while they move forward, but it's not the standard. But what I think we are going to start doing is basically just laying out the order of events. So then once more clearly, so that once something's done, like where we are on the roadmap, basically. But we're finishing the core update, marrying the new user interface, which is done, with the core update. We're working on in parallel, we're working on the on-chain mining shares. And then once the two core updates are done, which doesn't need to coincide with the release of the mining shares, it's kind of separate. Whichever comes first will come first. But the core, but one thing I should mention is the mining shares will be coded on the Bitcoin core code base, but that's already done for the back end for Verium. So we're not working on the old Verium code base anymore. We're just working on the front end for the new one. And so basically, once the core updates are done, boom, we go for the binary chain. Once the binary chain is activated and live, then we start working on applications at the layer between the two chains, the data layer between the two chains. And we can do kind of anything we want there, because it's not a blockchain per se. It uses blockchain data. So it's on-chain data, but it has more flexibility with what we can do with it. So that's, so I envision the speed actually of development increasing quite a bit now, because we've gotten through the hardest parts. At this point, we're basically putting pieces together that are already built.
Doug, once binary chain is implemented and you have that middle layer, you talk about applications. To what extent could that be involved with governance? Is there a role in that, or would because I think governance is a big issue that this project is. Any project that's going to scale at a large level, you're going to have some governance issues. So what's the...
Yeah, so my opinion is that you have governance whether you say you have governance or not.
Okay.
And so all the projects that say they don't want to do governance, they have unclear governance. And that's basically how we have been largely too. We've been as transparent as possible, but it's kind of like you're working with volunteers, people come and go, the market changes, everything's changing all the time, and it's fluid. Everything's fluid, and you just kind of try and make everything work in the best way possible. So the reality is there's a few protocols now that actually have governance, such as like the Tezos, Decred, I think is one, though I don't know too much about it, but I've read and heard that it has a sort of governance model. In a way, Dash has a sort of governance model with the masternodes. The cool thing about having the binary chain is we can implement a governance type model. Basically, long story short, is a voting system. I mean, an on-chain voting system. Once you have that, you can do whatever extent of governance you want to do, and that can all be determined by what people feel is necessary. But yeah, I mean, I think using some of the governance models on chain that have worked in some of these other projects, we could certainly implement that in the layer between the two chains, which we're going to have to come up with a name for, because the layer between the two chains is not that good to say. But
I've got some funny names on mine.
But yeah, no, I think the space is heading into this now where, I mean, you can choose to there's an argument to be made that like all governance is bad, and there's another argument that if you don't have governance, it's just chaos. It's basically some form of Lord of the Flies. I think both are true. I think you can overdo governance on blockchain, and I think if you technically don't have it, you oftentimes it devolves to Lord of the Flies. But where the chain itself might be decentralized to the extent that the hash rate or whatever is decentralized, but everything else is like some sort of weird thing between a handful of people. So I think there's a healthy amount of governance that we can add, primarily some voting mechanism for the important things, like funds, how funds are spent, how what should we raise money for, what protocol should the protocol update be, this, that, or the other, these types of important things.
Yeah, I think especially when you get into protocol updates, where if you only have a couple people making those decisions, then it really isn't decentralized, even if everything else around it is. But so if basically the protocol is changing without any input, at this stage, I think it's one thing. I'm not saying with relationship to this project specifically, but I just think in general, that's where governance really comes into play. You get it,
yeah,
like
that's the most
protocol
important
level.
thing, I think. Yeah, and like, I mean, in theory, once you have an economic cycle, there could be a lot more reasons to have governance for all different things. But like all different kinds of things. Could be private governance models, it could be public governance models, could be all kinds of things. But in terms of the blockchain and our project, primarily protocol updates, I would say, yeah.
Yeah.
Most
Okay.
important.
I think we've covered most of what we had on our agenda. There were a couple other questions, so that
Yeah.
and we'll finish up a couple questions and we can wrap it up because we're getting close to an hour. What can we do to involve other developers picking up tasks? I'd love to see like a list of outstanding tasks or specific things that need to be worked on, and then that way. And I'll chime in. I think this extends beyond just development itself in terms of like coding. I think you can talk about this could relate to marketing. It could relate to content on the web. It could be relate to help articles. I mean, that should really extend across the board. And I think and I'll let you answer on the definite like development end of things, but I think we've tried a few different things with this, and it's just
nothing
nothing
ever took off.
Well, and I think to some level,
becoming like our organization tool, which is not optimal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and to some level, and I've heard a lot of people say, the project needs, more structure in terms of like leadership levels and hierarchies and things like that. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do agree with there needs to be more of a, and I'll take on my end just things that I would like to see. There's things that I know need to be done that I haven't done yet, and so if we get another bull run like we had in 2017, there's a ton more people coming into Slack. There's a ton more people coming onto the Facebook page and just joining the community in general. And a lot of them want to help. And the minute someone says, I want to help, if they're not given like clear direction of what they can do to help the project, it's like lost opportunity. Yeah, I think from that end, there does need to be more planning and organizational structure. But at the same time, you can't delegate a task to someone and then get all pissed off at them if they didn't do it, because they're doing it as a volunteer. They're doing it as a contributor. Yeah, they let the community down if they said they were going to do something, they didn't do it. But at the end of the day, you can't really hold someone accountable the same as if they had a job.
There's nonprofit organizations that pay salaries, which is more similar to a blockchain community run project than a company, but it's even different than that because we're not paying salaries either. So it's basically like it's kind of like a meritocracy of sorts, just out of necessity, where people who rise up with skills we support. Like Bo, stepped up on his own personal interest. And we're going to support to whatever extent we can the project that he's working on. Fightin was another one of those. Many of the developers were like that over the years. And this has kind of been the approach. This is how we filter it, have been filtering it. But yeah, we could probably harness a lot more human power if we had a more organized entry point. But there's another thing that is a little more nebulous that people don't quite realize. Well, people should realize, but don't seem to. And that is the ebb and flow of the entire market. So people rush in the bull market and then largely get pulled out by the tide in the bear market. And so if you invested into an organizational structure, with certain people in place, and then they get pulled out with the bear market tide, boom, what do you do? That now you have to reinvest all that organization and time and role to new people and so on. And it's basically like a time suck where you're just constantly taking waves of people in and out and trying, you know, so there's like some nebulous practical matters that relate to the pace of this space and the market pace, and it all basically boils down to we're not paying salaries. Because if you're paying people salary, then it wouldn't necessarily matter what the price of VeriCoin or Verium or Bitcoin is. And I think one of the best ways to get more to like a real revenue model is to partner with third parties like Bo and other and like Charlie, people who are trying to build businesses around the Vereconomy or in the Vereconomy or tangential to it or whatever. And then, you know, we can make some sort the VeriCoin, the community can partner with them, and there can be some potential revenue sharing and so on and so forth, in addition to interest we have being earned. But the interest we have being earned is dependent on the market. So it's really, we kind of need to partner and break out of this just fluid market-based approach. I think that's one of the key components of actually having an organized structure, because I'm not going to spend you know, hours training someone to do some role that I suspect they're going to be gone in 2 weeks or 2 months.
Sure,
or you know.
And I think this is where one of the first things that I kind of, when I was contracted to come in and help, my first thought, I was researching the project online, and I'm looking at like artwork or things that were done that were off brand. So like the VeriCoin logo was like, you know, just not the logo, it was some other thing. Color schemes were all off. I was reading documents that were outdated. So basically I was going all through the web, and there was not much consistency with what I saw. And from there, I thought, okay, the very first thing is we need to have a very solid resources section. So if it's on the official website as a resource, you know that it's valid, you know that it's accurate, you know that it's updated. And I think that's a starting point. Just from that mindset of you want to set up the structure so it's not so much dependent on who is doing it, but an overall guideline of what is to be done.
Right.
And the other way around this is and this kind of goes back to the idea of decentralization. So the project shouldn't be dependent on one person. There's like, from a marketing perspective, I have no actual I have an influence, but I don't have any overarching power than anybody else for all reality. And so but the idea is, I think you build committees, you build teams of people. And that way, if one person leaves, you still got 7 or 8 that are contributing, or 20 or 50, however. I mean, at some point there needs to be something. You don't want to have too many kitchens or too many cooks in the kitchen per se. But,
Right.
But the point is, you want to build like more of a committee than a person that's handling this or that.
Yes.
So from that end,
the other thing I'll say related is, people have called for in the past having like rewards come to the VeriCoin Foundation from the coin protocols. I'm opposed to it. I don't think it's a good idea. I think that at the end of the day, if you're sending coins to some sort of organization that other people don't have the same opportunity to access, that basically I mean, not only do I think like ethically or legally it's questionable, but I think at the end of the day, what you're creating is a rewards network. You know, you're basically like, you basically have store credits, and the company that is getting the credits is, you know, that other people can't access is the store. I don't think you can be a currency and send coins to anyone in particular that other people can't just freely compete for. So I'm opposed to having income streams that are directed towards anything in the protocol. However, us having coins and earning interest is, you know, for the community is something we can do, because anyone else can do that too. There's no special authority there. So you know, people can contribute to that kind of thing. But yeah, so I and that's also kind of why I'm opposed. I think in the end we're going to end up like Birdie has mentioned, and others have mentioned masternodes. I'm opposed to masternodes on this same level, because I think it's basically setting up more centralized points in the network that have additional authority. In reality, that happens anyway, because some people have more coins, some people have more hash power, some people have better servers to handle transactions, and so on. It happens naturally, and when it happens naturally, it happens because they're invested, or because they made that choice. If you're directly incentivizing people to centralize into factions on the network, I think again you end up with some sort of strange Lord of the Flies governance model. But I do think that like as I was saying, in the layer between the chains, if we have exchanging happening, you know, we then have some subset of people have the biggest hash power, and that's the way it is. Some subset of people have the biggest stake power, and that's because of their own choices. Some subset of people are moving the most volume of coins because they're acting as a P2P exchanger, and that's out of their own choices. So I think in the end you can end up having like a masternode like effect just naturally. I feel like that's the way to do it. And maybe the exchanger, the P2P exchanger, is the closest thing to what people would refer to as like a masternode, because they're going to have volume. They can earn revenue from the volume that they support on the network for trading and so on. And there can be many other possible applications that are like this in that layer. But I think it's essential that we have a network that has no special treatment apart from what is built into the consensus protocol itself. POS, POW.
And with that said, I know that people in the community have kind of talked about possibly creating a little bit more demand for, you know, Verium by holding it, you know, and creating that more staking power. Is that a possibility? Or
yeah. So I think that's so that goes into the category of anyone can do it. So I think that's totally fine. And that actually has been talked about, and I think it's a good idea, and we can discuss it as a community. But I think most people are in support of it, where it could happen in a number of different ways. Verium is a store of value and intended to be low supply, but we can use a Verium balance as proof of ownership of the store of value to enable you to either earn more VeriCoin through staking or more VeriCoin through auxiliary mining via Verium to VeriCoin. So yeah, I think actually that's going to end up being one of the unique like kind of applications of the binary chain layer is that kind of mechanism where it does make sense that you should be able to earn effectively interest on your Verium holdings just in VeriCoin because it's the currency. So I think the community is in support of that, and it's totally doable for the binary chain, and I think it makes sense. And it's something where naturally someone can access more power on the network via their own investments, their own actions, no special treatment.
Okay, well, we're on over an hour, so I say we wrap it up. Bo, I appreciate everything you're doing and taking part of this hangout. I think we want to do more of these where we bring more people that are contributing and give them awareness. We have the blog post too. So Bo's is not published yet. I'll get that up either later tonight or definitely tomorrow. That way you can learn more about what he's doing. And while you're there, you can check all the other previous featured community members and give them a shout out if you see them online or whatever, because it's everyone that's doing their part that's making this project, a success. So we'll wrap it up. We'll probably try to do another hangout. We're kind of doing them really once every 2 months. I think we did one in December, one in February, and now in April. In this case, it was timely. We needed to do one for a few different reasons. But yeah, again, everyone, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the VeriCoin channel. That way, anytime we add new videos, you'll be alerted. And if you want to contribute from the marketing side, I suggest you join Slack. There's a marketing channel. And then any way you want to contribute, best thing to do is just reach out to any of us, and we'll put you in the right direction. So take care. I hope everyone has a good weekend, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, guys.
All right. See you guys. Thanks.
Bye.